Today, we are diving into a topic that honestly sounds like something straight out of a medical drama: tumors inside the human heart. We're going to crack this case wide open, take a look at the different types, the usual suspects, and how doctors can tell the difference between a real threat and a clever imposter. So let's get right into it.
All right, let's just start with the biggest question on everyone's mind. I mean, we hear about cancer in almost every part of the body, right? But the heart, it just seems almost untouchable. So can you actually get a tumor, a cancer, growing inside the very organ that's pumping life through your veins? Well, the answer is yes, but it is not at all what you probably think.
And our first major clue is this number right here, 30. What does that mean? Well, it means that a cancer is 30 times more likely to have spread to the heart from somewhere else in the body than it is to have started there in the first place. So you can see, the heart is much more likely to be a destination than a starting point.
And that brings us to a really crucial distinction we have to make. For the rest of this breakdown, we're going to think about heart tumors in two totally different categories. The invaders, those are the cancers that travel to the heart, and the super rare, homegrown tumors that actually start from heart tissue itself. Now, this slide lays out the case file for us just perfectly. The invaders, or metastatic tumors, they're the common culprits, making up the huge majority of cases. They usually set up shop on the pericardium, which is that protective sac that goes all the way around the heart. On the other hand, the homegrown tumors, the primary ones, they're the true rarities, and they can pop up pretty much anywhere inside, the chambers, the walls, or even right on those delicate heart valves.
So, let's start our investigation with the most frequent offenders, the invaders. Since these metastatic tumors are 30 times more common, they are, by far, the usual suspects when a mass is found in the heart. But where are they coming from?
So, if you had to take a guess, which cancer that starts somewhere else in the body is the one most often found to have traveled to the heart? Here's your biggest clue. Think about which cancers are most common in general. Any guesses?
And the answer is lung cancer. Now, this isn't because lung cancer has some sort of special attraction to the heart. It's really just a numbers game. Because lung cancer is, unfortunately, so common, it just statistically has way more opportunities to spread. And when it does, the heart is a potential target, usually affecting that outer sac, the pericardium.
Okay, but here's a fantastic little twist that doctors have to be really aware of. See, being the most common isn't the same thing as being the most likely. There's another cancer that, while it's less common overall, has a much higher tendency, a higher percentage of cases that will actually spread to the heart. Let's find out who this culprit is.
Melanoma. Yep, this aggressive skin cancer has the highest percentage of cases that spread to the heart. And unlike lung cancer, which usually just hangs out on the outside, melanoma has this nasty habit of getting right into the heart muscle itself, the myocardium. So, while you'll see lung cancer in the heart more often, if a patient has melanoma, they have a higher relative risk of it showing up in their heart.
All right, so we've dealt with the invaders. Now let's shift our investigation over to the much rarer homegrown cases, the primary tumors that actually start in the heart. We're going to look at the three most wanted suspects in the adult population.
First up is the most common primary heart tumor you'll find in adults, the myxoma. And I'm calling it a benign wrecking ball for a really good reason. Because even though it's not technically cancerous, it's benign. It can cause a huge amount of trouble. So, looking at its profile, the myxoma typically grows from the wall between the heart's upper chambers, and it just sort of dangles into the left atrium. The real danger comes from that key clue. It can act like a wrecking ball on a stalk, swinging back and forth and, temporarily blocking the mitral valve. This can cause all sorts of problems, like fainting or shortness of breath.
Now for our second suspect, and this one is definitely not benign. Meet the Angiosarcoma. This is the most common malignant or cancerous primary tumor of the heart in adults. It's a truly aggressive intruder.
The angiosarcoma has a very distinct pattern. Unlike the myxoma, which you find in the left atrium, this cancer actually prefers the right atrium. It's often really bulky, and it tends to involve that outer sac, the pericardium, which can cause some serious issues like right-sided heart failure. And on imaging, doctors are looking for that classic sun ray appearance as it grows.
Our third and final adult suspect is a real specialist. You see, the papillary fibroelastoma isn't really interested in the heart chambers. It has a very specific target.
And that target is the heart valves themselves. This is the most common tumor found right on the valves, usually the aortic or mitral. Now, you might be thinking, a small tumor isn't that big a deal, but its location is absolutely everything. Because they are so mobile and they sit right in the stream of blood flow, little pieces can break off and travel to the brain, causing a stroke. This makes them incredibly dangerous, no matter how small they are.
So, we've covered the adults, but what about kids? Well, the lineup of suspects changes completely. It paints a very, very different picture.
The number one most common cardiac tumor in fetuses and in children is the rhabdomyoma. But this tumor comes with a truly astonishing and hopeful twist, which is why I've called it the vanishing hamartoma. Now, a hamartoma is just a benign jumble of normal tissue, but this one has a pretty remarkable secret.
Just look at this profile. It's strongly associated with a genetic condition called tuberous sclerosis, and it prefers the ventricles, the powerful lower chambers of the heart. But here is the amazing part. That key clue. In most cases, these tumors will spontaneously regress. They just shrink and disappear all on their own as the child gets older. It's a truly remarkable phenomenon.
Okay, we've met the invaders and the homegrown suspects, but, in any good detective story, there's always the case of mistaken identity. There is one thing found in the heart far more often than any tumor, and it is the #1 imposter that doctors have to rule out.
So what do you think it is? What is the most common mass you can find inside the heart? And what's the simple, kind of elegant test that lets a radiologist say with certainty, nope, that's not a tumor?
And the answer is a simple blood clot, or a thrombus. And this slide illustrates the key difference perfectly. On a cardiac MRI, a special dye is injected into the bloodstream. A tumor is living tissue. It has its own blood supply, so it will soak up that dye and enhance, or, light up on the scan. A blood clot? It has no internal blood supply. It's just a clump of cells, so it won't light up. It's a beautifully simple way to tell a tumor from an imposter.
Okay, let's quickly recap the crucial points from our investigation. First, invaders are way more common than homegrown tumors. 30 times more, remember that. Second, for homegrown adult tumors, remember, myxoma is the most common benign one, and angiosarcoma is the most common malignant one. Third, the most common mass of all isn't even a tumor, it's a blood clot. And finally, that MRI contrast dye is the key. It's how you tell them apart.
And I just want to leave you with one final thought. We learned that rhabdomyomas, the most common heart tumor in children, often just disappear. This isn't science fiction, it is a documented medical reality. And it raises this fascinating question that researchers are still exploring. Why? What biological switch gets flipped that tells this mass to simply go away? It's a great reminder that even in the most understood parts of our bodies, there's still some profound mysteries left to solve.